I think it's really appropriate that the theme tonight is truth be told, because here we are gathered on the eve of the 60th anniversary of the day that we found out that our government was lying to us, or at least began to figure that out, when President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas on November 22, 1963. I was 8 years old and in the third grade at the time, and they let us out of school early that day, but they didn't tell us why. Our teacher just said, "Go outside, your parents are here to take you home." So I went outside, my mother was waiting there, took me to the car, and as I got in the car, she told me immediately what had happened. And all I really knew, I was 8 years old, so I didn't really know the line of presidential succession, but I remembered that there had been a big election a few years before where everybody was debating whether to vote for Kennedy or Nixon. So I said to my mother, "Does this mean Nixon takes over?" And naively she said no. And then we went on to go home, and 2 days later we saw Jack Ruby shoot Lee Harvey Oswald on live TV. And then LBJ, the only person who directly benefited from the assassination, created the Warren Commission, where he handpicked cronies of his to decide that Oswald acted alone and we didn't need to be worried about any conspiracy theories. By that time, I had become cynical at the age of 8, and I started to read some of these conspiracy theory books. The first one I remember was Mark Lane's Rush to Judgment, and I became convinced that there was a conspiracy and that we just needed to find out who was in on it and follow that as far as we could. A lot of people adopted that opinion, and none of us have ever been fully satisfied, because those theories go on multiplying. The government still has thousands of documents that they haven't released, and we all wonder who really killed President Kennedy. So in that vein, it's not surprising that when my wife got the chance to go to Dallas for a conference a month ago, I asked to tag along and did. And so I had a couple of days to just hang out in Dallas myself. And of course, I was going to do some of my own investigation. So I went, I had already been to the School Book Depository Building and the Grassy Knoll and those sites before, and I had my opinions of what those facts were, but I wanted to find something more this time. So I got on Google and I looked to see if there were other sites that might be interesting, and I found a site that looked tremendously interesting to me, and it's called the Oswald Rooming House Museum. And it is just what it sounds like. It is a museum in the home where Oswald lived as a roomer in a rooming house at the time he was employed at the School Book Depository Building. It's a private museum. It's in a residential neighborhood, and it's run by a lovely Texas, I'll say Southern Belle type lady. She's very polite, very nice. She's 71 years old. Her name is Patricia Hall. She insists that everybody call her Miss Pat. So I had to call and make an appointment to visit this private museum, and Miss Pat graciously gave me a time to come and said that the museum visit would take about 2 hours. So I set that time aside, and when I showed up at this house, it's a modest house in a very middle-class neighborhood, one story, and she met me at the front door, and as she showed me in the front door, she said, "Welcome to 1963. And that was really true, because as I went in, I saw doilies on the tables, quilted covers on the furniture, and a huge TV cabinet with a very small screen TV in it. And I was immediately curious about the TV, so she gave me some of the background. She had been 11 years old at the time of the assassination. Her grandmother ran the rooming house at that time, And Oswald had lived there for about 2 months before the assassination. She showed me the room that he lived in, which was so narrow that I could touch both walls, and a very small bed that he slept in. And she showed me a replica of the jacket that he had come to get that night, or that day, on the day of the assassination. And I asked her about the TV. I said, "Is this the same TV that was here?" She said, "Yes, it is, and it still works." And she turned it on, and she had actually a videotape of Walter Cronkite coming on to the soap opera that the housekeeper that day had been watching to make the announcement about President Kennedy being shot. So I saw that on the original TV screen, and it had an effect on me. But as I talked to Miss Pat, I saw that she had these huge 3-ring binders on the table in front of us, and they were packed with articles and photographs and all the facts that she has gathered over the years, because she, more than anybody I've ever met, really cares about what the answer to that question is: who did this? She showed me a lot of very interesting photographs and articles, and then I finally hit her with what I considered the big question was, "Well, Miss Pat, who do you think killed President Kennedy?" And she said, and I loved this answer, she said, "I don't know, because I don't believe in making a guess and trying to back it up. I believe in getting all the facts first and then making a good decision based on that." And she said, "We're still waiting for all the facts to come out." And she's right about that. She gave me her card, and the card for the museum, business card for the museum says, "The Oswald Rooming House Museum, where the search for truth is never discouraged." And I loved that attitude that she has, the fact that she hasn't given up on this. Those of us who cared about President Kennedy haven't given up on this. And I hope that Miss Pat finds the truth and speaks it when she finds it. And God bless her, and I can't wait to hear from her.